long ago, I listened as church growth experts were telling us of the woes of the liturgical church. Their point was that Gen Xers, those born in the late 1960s, no longer connected with the rituals of worship. They wanted something more experiential. As a result, we saw the advent of the megachurches. Churches that grew by giving people what they wanted, an experience. They did away with the rituals most were accustomed to and sought ways to engender an emotional response that people could feel and walk away from worship saying, yes, I felt that. Seeing their success, smaller churches tried to replicate what the bigger churches were doing, only to find that they did not get the same results. As years passed, these same church growth experts noticed something in the larger churches they hadn't expected. Churches that are non-traditionally ritualistic churches. Despite the number of new members they reported, their longtime members were declining. When these experts would interview people who left these churches, they learned that the depth of the experience that people felt diminished over time, and that they found themselves in want and yearning for a new and deeper experience. Here's the thing. These churches, like all other churches, had become ritualistic. In that they did the same thing with the idea of getting the same results each and every time they gathered. Those who left knew that they were missing something. They just did not know what it was. It was noted that those who left would continue searching, most of them at least, going from church to church in search of whatever it was they could hope to find. Not finding what they were looking for, many just stopped looking. Then along comes the millennial generation, those born in the 1980s and early 90s. Many raised outside of the church because of their parents' disillusionment with the church. And they grew up in a period of drastic change. The technology boom shifted us from a more communal society to one where our community circles became so much smaller. Megachurches for many millennials was just too communal. To try to reach out to this new generation, the megachurches broke into what they called campuses, smaller churches, all connected to the central faith community through technology and shared mission. But even this did not bring the success they had hoped for. Millennials were looking past the experience. They wanted something more. But as they did not receive that religious grounding in their youth that their parents had, they did not know if what they were running into was what they were looking for. Some would keep searching. Many would not. As a result, many of their children would grow up outside the church, being the second generation in a row to do so, having no understanding of what the church is, what it does, or why it even exists. Today, society as a whole is very similar to that of the time of Paul. Religion, for the most part, lacks relevance to those who encounter it. Those who do explore what it offers often find what Jesus found. People going through the motions without any sense of purpose other than to go through the motions. This is why in today's gospel, Jesus tells the people that their actions, their efforts, must exceed those of the scribes and the Pharisees. To know, or to use a more modern phrase, to experience the love of God, Jesus is saying that we have to go beyond doing what we do just because we're supposed to do it. We can't just sit back and be entertained. We can't just use magical words in a methodical way. We need to be in relationship with the one whose love is being offered, both personally and as community. And then that relationship makes all things possible through Christ. Similarly, Paul makes the case that it is through our relationships grown in community that best reveals God's love for each and every one of us. Love that is revealed in and through Jesus Christ. Both Jesus and Paul tell us that there's a difference between just knowing or being aware of relationship and being in relationship. Awareness, we are told, comes from hearing or experiencing. But being only comes from sharing in. Sharing in it. Jesus kind of makes this clear, in my opinion, using the imagery of us as lights to the world. Our light does not shine as it should if we keep it to ourselves. But in sharing it, it has its greatest effect. But alone, our lights are limited. But when we bring our lights together, we can do so much more. The danger, of course, is that we can find a lot of comfort when we are surrounded by lights like us. Comfort that keeps us from taking our light out into the world. But when we find the courage to do just that, what a difference we can make. I'm sure each of us have gone to visit a friend in the evening. A friend who has left a porch light on for us to help us find our way. But that journey from the curb into the light can be a dangerous and uncertain one, as the pathway can be covered in the shadows of darkness. Think of us gathered together as that porch light. Together we shine brightly into the night, as I've already mentioned, inviting others to come and see what our light reveals. But the pathway to it is not always clear. And as a result, even those who see the light, those who are drawn towards it, will avoid the journey out of fear or uncertainty. Yet if we take our lights from beyond the porch and light the way like night lights along the pathway, we can help them find their way. During our annual meeting last week, I challenged people to be more regular in their weekly attendance. Because it's in community that we find our strength, that our relationships are built, and where God's love is made known. As the light within us is joined with the lights of the other, I said it already, we shine even more brightly. And in doing so, people's attention is then drawn towards us. Now, this can be either good or bad, depending upon what they see. If they find a community more interested in caring for the light that they have, instead of sharing it, or helping others to know that that light is within them too, the chances are they will not find what they are looking for. They will not find Christ in our midst, and they will drift away. Just as those in the megachurches seek more than what they have found. But if they see a community who lights the pathway to ensure their safety, helping them feel more welcome as they draw closer to that light, and they see a community who is committed, invested in taking their light out into the world with energy and joy, It is my belief that this is a community in which they will find Christ. Not hidden under some bushel basket, but out in the open for all to see. And that it is in a community like this they will want to be part of. Not just for 1 hour on Sunday morning, but the other 167 hours of the week. The only way this happens is when relationship is an essential part of our worship and our lives. That is what many who lead these larger churches say is missing. Relationship. Relationship with one another, and yes, with the Lord as well. What do we do the other 167 hours of the week to help deepen our relationships so that we don't drift away? Or that might help invite others into relationship with us and with God? Do we volunteer? Do we pray? Do we read the scriptures? If not, maybe this is something we should consider. If we are, do we let our light shine so that others may find their way? Paul says the answer to these two questions depends upon which spirit we follow. What spirit do we follow? I pray it is the Spirit of God. Amen.